Welcome and thank you all so much for joining us. This is an information session for the Creatives Rebuild New York Artist Employment Program and Guaranteed Income for Artists Opportunities. And we are super excited to be able to share information about this opportunity with you all. My name is Kinsey Keck. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white, cis, non-disabled woman. I have dark brown hair. It's up in a ponytail today and long bangs. I'm wearing some metal framed, large round glasses, a pink and white striped, horizontal striped t-shirt. And I'm sitting in my kitchen. So you can see my fridge behind me with photos of my nieces and nephews mostly. And I am also the programming and membership manager for the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. The Roundtable is a grassroots service organization that works to improve and advance the state of arts education through professional development workshops, advocacy, and online resources and platforms to connect the arts education field. So although we are currently meeting on Zoom online, the Roundtable would like to acknowledge that we work and live on unceded lands. Manhattan, or the place that is widely known as New York City, exists on the contemporary and ancestral homelands of the Canarsie, Lenape, Munsee, and Wappinger people. These sovereign nations and communities are still thriving here, and we continue to occupy their lands. We would like to give a moment of respect to them, as well as to the Black and immigrant communities, which have helped build the city that we know today. As we recognize that all of our pasts, presents, and futures are intertwined, I want to take a moment to uplift a couple of contemporary Indigenous arts organizations that we can all support and learn from, and I will share in the chat. The first is the Lenape Center. There's a link for you there. And the Lenape Center hosts workshops, programs, symposia, performances, ceremonies, and they're a really excellent resource for folks in the area who want to deepen their understanding of the land that they live on and this thriving Indigenous community that is here. The second that I'll share is the Red Hawk Native American Arts Council. There's a link for you to check them out as well. That is a nonprofit organization made up of representatives from many different Indigenous identities, and they offer a ton of programming with tons of artistic disciplines to educate the public about Indigenous heritage. So I encourage you to please do research on these organizations and more in your area, the land that you live on, and please donate to them, support them, and take a moment to take a look at what is around you. Thank you for that. And I believe that is it for my announcements. So it is my sincere pleasure to introduce to you Christopher Moulet, Sarah Calderon, and Mara Cuffey-Peterson, who are all representatives of the Creatives Rebuild New York project that we are all going to hear about today. So welcome to you all, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. Mara, should I start us off? Okay, so welcome. Wow, thank you so much. We really appreciate being here. I'm also finding it very exciting to see so many names pop up as folks are entering, because I know quite a few of you. And I should also just mention that it's clear that the Arts and Ed Roundtable has brought out so far the most folks we've had at any of these events. So thanks for spending your time with us. I am Sarah Calderon. I am the Executive Director of Creatives Rebuild New York. I am a white woman who has long brown hair, brown hazel eyes, and clear glasses so that I can see. I need these more and more. I'm wearing a bright pink shirt, and I am standing in my bedroom, which is now my home office, with white walls and a red framed piece of art. So let's see. So again, thank you for coming. And I'll start off just by giving a brief overview of CRNY and these two funding opportunities, and then I'll hand it over to my amazing colleagues, Chris and Mara. So CRNY is a 3-year investment. It's a $125 million investment to support the financial stability of New York State artists and the organizations that employ them. I wanted to just talk a little bit about the values that have informed all of this work. So I'll talk in a second. I'll show some names of folks who were on our think tank. So since launching in July, for the past 6 months, besides getting all of our wonderful staff on board and trying to get our footing and getting our fiscal sponsorship with Science Foundation, we've been working with an amazing group of folks from across New York State. Artists, teaching artists, arts administrators, guaranteed income experts, academics, et cetera, thinking about sort of what do we want these programs to look like? What do we want funding to look like? And we've come, and when we've thought about all of this work, it's been based on these values, and you can read them for yourselves, but it's really about this idea of centering and caring for artists, trusting and respecting program participants, considering worker solidarity and labor, and in particular, understanding the labor of artists, equitable access to funds and opportunities that are reparative, and an invitation to challenge and reimagine existing systems and institutions. So we hope that as we go through, you see how some of these values have come through this work. Here's just a list of our think tank. These folks are also on our website, and some of you may know some of these amazing folks, but we really owe a lot to them for walking with us on this journey and really co-creating these programs with us, and also understanding, sometimes how difficult it can be to design programs, and in particular to figure out a way to give our individuals cash. So I'll just do a quick overview. At CRNY, there's sort of 3 components to our work. So there's our guaranteed income work, our artist employment work, and then there's our narrative change, research and narrative change work. Today, we'll be really diving into the artist employment program and guaranteed income, because we're now open to give away funds. Artist employment, I'll just go over a quick overview, which is really, it's about artists and organizations coming together to figure out ways that artists can be employed, can receive salaries and benefits, and can work collaboratively with an organization for in support of community needs and opportunities. For guaranteed income, it's really about individual artists receiving no strings attached cash payments for 18 months. And so Chris and Mara will go through that in a lot of detail, but I just want to point out that there are sort of these 2 pathways that as an artist, you can think about. And as an organization, there's one pathway that's appropriate for you. The next slide, please. The third component of the work that CRNY is doing is research and narrative change. And one of the key components of that is this portrait of New York State artists, which is a questionnaire that we are attaching to all of our applications so that we can figure out what is the actual state of what is the state of New York State artists currently. Where do folks live? Who are they? What are they doing? We know that artists are in every community in our state, but we also don't have any statewide data on individual artists. So this portrait asks questions around artistic practice, financial security, well-being, pandemic experience, and then attitudes about policy and advocacy. And we hope to use this to share it with our colleagues, to share it back with all of you, and to start thinking about policy change and philanthropic messaging that needs to happen to better understand artists' needs. I think I'll mention one last piece of what we discussed with the think tank, which was really this idea of how across all of our programs, all of our work, how are we defining and thinking about artists? So we came to this definition that an artist is an artist, culture bearer, or culture maker. And I don't need to read all of this to you, but this is all on our guidelines and on our website. There's an entire page dedicated to our artist definition. And in addition to this definition, we also have very specifically the artistic disciplines that we're thinking about for this work. And I think, well, finally, I think applications, just so that you know, opened on Monday, February 14th. There's been a lot of excitement about it, and they close March 25th. And it's the same opening and closing dates for both programs that Mara and Chris will talk to you about in just a moment. Okay, so Chris, I am turning it over to you now to give all of the exciting details about the Artist Employment Program.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all so much for having us here. It's such an honor to be part of this network for the moment. I worked with Philip Alexander for a while at the Brooklyn Arts Council, and I was always jealous of this network. I always felt like he got to go to cool conferences and learned a lot and was inspired. So I was always envious. So I'm just going to pretend that I'm part of your network right now, and I appreciate it. So the Artist Employment Program is one of the opportunities that's available right now. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I co-direct this program with Bella Desai. So if you have questions and you see Bella Desai and Christopher Millet, please reach out to one of us or both of us. And if we go to the next slide, you'll get a sense of a short and sweet and not complicated explanation. Funding for 300 artists, culture bearers and culture makers in collaboration with dozens of community-based organizations across New York State for 2 years. I'll just highlight the word collaboration, New York State, and community-based organizations. These can be arts or non-arts. So if we go to the next slide, so who is this for? This is a question that is exciting to answer. Organizations, the Artist Employment Program is for organizations who serve and artists who are Black, Indigenous, people of color, immigrants, LGBTQIAP+, the deaf and disabled, criminal legal system involved, and living at or below the poverty line, as well as rural areas. We're trying our best to have equity in mind, an equity lens, and also equal distribution as much as possible. So this is the Artist Employment Program. So I'm going to talk about employment a bit. So if you could go to the next slide, that would be great. And as Sarah had mentioned, this is a joint application. I want to caution that this is a different type of process, even in the mechanics of applying online. The jointness of the application really comes out. So the idea here is that organizations and artists need to come together and enter into a relationship together. And collaboration is key here. So collaborations can include 1 to 10 artists. Organizations can apply to employ 1 artist or multiple. Again, 1 to 10, whichever suits the particular initiative they're interested in pursuing. And situations with multiple artists, those artists can work collaboratively or in distinct ways. The entire proposed collaboration will be evaluated. And collaborators will not be evaluated individually. Also, multiple organizations can apply, but one organization must receive funding and be the key organization. So beyond just applying for a grant and hoping to get it, one of the things that's underlying this is that we hope it's an opportunity to build a relationship with artists, or if you're an artist, with an organization, and to speak to each other in a new way that might build future work, that might build other opportunities outside of this one. So that's a sort of a hidden motivation behind this. It's so exciting to have those conversations. I've had the privilege of having those with artists for years, and thinking about different ways we can collaborate is very exciting. So the next slide, please. This is about the this is about the numbers. So in the artist employment program, what does employment funding really mean here? So for artists, artists will receive $65,000 per year for 2 years. They'll receive benefits, and also they'll be encouraged to have dedicated time to focus on their practice. So this means that the artists, in conversation, while they're building this partnership with an organization, that there is a hope that there is priority or time given to their practice, because in the artist as work mentality, keeping their practice going is essential to them to thrive. In terms of organizations, so organizations that participate in the program will receive between $25,000 and $100,000 per organization annually, dependent on the number of artists employed and impact on organizational budgets. So these benefits will be administered in accordance with that organization's human resources practices. Artists will be paid on a payroll schedule, bi-weekly, bi-monthly, of the organization that holds their employment, either the collaborating organization or the intermediary. And I'll get into what I mean by intermediary at the next slide. So we know in New York State and all over, there's some organizations that are not able to handle the distribution of benefits, some of them are very much volunteer run and don't have that infrastructure. So there's two options here of who holds employment, who manages the distribution of benefits, of payroll, who manages the relationship in terms of human resources. So a collaborating organization can hold employment if they have the means and that's something they want to do. But there's also an aspect of this where we created a different option where employment is held through an intermediary. So we're in conversation with a workers' cooperative to act as this intermediary, to hold employment, provide benefits for a portion of the artist and the artist employment program. And this intermediary will support organizations that want to hire artists, they want to participate in this program, but have limited capacity to hold employment and or provide benefits. So the goal of the worker cooperative is not just administrative, it's also to create a collective of sorts where artists can be in solidarity together with artists, but also with other workers. There's a benefit here to buffer against any power dynamics between organization and artists. It also takes off this burden of an organization having to manage employment. So there's benefits on both sides, but that's up to the organization and the artist to figure out. I'll go to the next slide and talk about eligibility. In terms of artist eligibility, it's very simple. They have to be their primary residents of New York State, an artist, culture bearer, or culture maker, which Sarah talked about, and they cannot be a staff member or related to a staff member, immediate family member of Tides, which is our fiscal sponsor, or Creators Rebuild New York. So I've missed my shot at getting employment. In terms of organizational eligibility, they have to be a tax-exempt 501c3 public charity or government instrumentality and or fiscally sponsored by a 501c3 public charity, which I'll get into. They'll have their principal place of business in New York State, and they need to serve community. There's almost 3 aspects of this artist employment program that I want people to feel. There's the artist, there's the organization, community is the third. In terms of eligibility restrictions, so there can be multiple applications. So an artist and organization may participate as part of only one application to the artist employment program, but artists cannot seek to be employed by multiple organizations, and organizations themselves cannot submit multiple proposals involving different artists or collaborations. Artists are not permitted to apply to both the guaranteed income for artists and the artist employment program. So Maura is going to talk about the guaranteed income program. Both of these applications are open right now, but it's one of the things that's hard for artists to figure out is which is the right fit. we have some ways that we're going to help people figure that out, but hopefully through this webinar today, it can help you figure that out. I'm going to talk about eligibility restrictions in terms of fiscal sponsorship. So an LLC or other non-501c3 org cannot apply as the primary organization, but may apply with a fiscal sponsor that is a 501c3 public charity or is a collaborating partner on a 501c3's organization's application. So think of this almost as a hub and spoke kind of situation. An artist may work with a non-501c3 organization only if that organization is fiscally sponsored by a 501c3 public charity. Also, finally, a fiscally sponsored individual artist is not eligible to apply without a 501c3 organization that will employ them. Let's talk about eligibility restrictions. The last part of that is intellectual property rights. So participating organizations will not have or obtain any intellectual property rights to works created by the artist during the time the artists are working independently from, although employed by, their partners. This is a bit different than some situations when you get into an employment contract of some sort. Selection and review. In terms of selection criteria, this is going to feed into what the potential work relationship is, or the type of work that gets done. So right here, it talks about centering relationship and reciprocity. So relationship in terms of the collaboration between the artist and organization and the relationship that work will have to the community. In terms of reciprocity, the key thing here and thinking through this balance between artist and organization is mutual benefit on both sides. So in coming to this agreement or this brokering this collaboration, thinking what this might be, the main thing here is thinking through reciprocity. So in terms of selection criteria, the way that the applications will be reviewed is thinking through the strength and integrity of the proposed collaboration, the alignment of the proposed collaboration with CRNY's values, and the capacity of the organization to support artists, and the impact on organization's financial capacity. I just want to stress something here in terms of the capacity of the organization to support artists. That's not to say that if you're a big organization, that we're going to assume that you have the capacity to support artists. It's based on a variety of things. I just want to point that out because I think some people are, in a lot of grant applications, it's thought of as like, if you're a big organization, you have large capacity, you can support. Support for artists can come in small to mid-size as well. So again, the reciprocity is talking about community as well. So in terms of the review process, we have stage 1, which we're in now until March 25th. When that's done, we'll hit stage 1. Application review will be about external peer reviewers looking at the application. But then in stage 2 for the Artist Employment Program, we'll move to a more interview focused situation where there'll be invitations for online interviews with collaborators, external reviewers, and CRNY staff. We have paid very close attention to geographic expertise. So within those peer reviews, we're making sure that these applications will be reviewed with people that know that region, know that area, or know that affinity group, whether it's Indigenous artists and communities or others. How to apply. Artists and organizations, again, work together and co-create a proposal for collaboration. I will say applications are open. I know it feels like not a lot of time to March 25th, but see this as an opportunity to sit down, think through your application together, artists and organizations. And I will also say that it doesn't have to be a fully formed idea of what you're going to do for 2 years. We're not asking you for a timeline to say by by 2023 we'll have hit these marks. It's not that type of situation at all, and you'll see that in the application. So all parties can submit their information through our web-based application platform on Submittable. Many of you probably know that, and No Submittable. And the application asks for basic information about each participating artist and organization, and then asks for 3 brief narrative questions about the proposed collaboration, which is so nice to hear. 3 narrative questions. And we'll get a lot out of the experience of the interview as well, which that will be a chance to do a deeper dive and to have more communication about the proposed ideas. So how to apply. An application can be initiated by either an artist or an organizational representative, and the person who begins the application will be designated as the primary applicant. The primary applicant, next slide please, is responsible for the following: entering their own information, adding additional artists and organizational collaborators to the application. One organization must be identified as the primary organization, and this is the organization that will receive direct funding from CRNY, and confirming that all collaborators have submitted the information. And they're also responsible for submitting the finalized application with narrative questions. This is a different type of application than I've experienced. What it does is ensure that there's nothing about us without us. There is a deep collaboration happening, and what is written about and who is collaborating, who is contributing. So I'm proud of this. I think it's something to keep in mind before entering into it. And the last slide is how to apply. Other collaborators are responsible for filling out the form they received after the primary applicant adds them to the joint application. And then they would contribute to the narrative questions. So artists might be the collaborator. They receive a reference form to fill out that is sent by the primary applicant. So it's a very interesting process. The last part is important dates to remember. Applications are open. Stage 1 applications, this is the submittables portion, March 25th is when they close. Stage 1 finalists are notified by April 11th. Stage 2, these online interviews, will happen between April 25th and May 20th, and selected partnerships are notified on June 6th. Artist employment will begin in June 2022. The organizational first installment of funds will be dispersed in June 2022, and artist employment ends on June 2024. I want to do one quick sort of exercise. Actually, you can't turn on your cameras, can you? I'm not sure. This is a webinar. Oh, that's a bummer. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this idea of bringing artists and organizations together is really important. This is one of the hard parts of this application is, what if you're an artist that really wants to do this, but does not have an organization? Or if you're an organization and you're saying, you know what, after 2020, I'm thinking about connecting with a particular group or I have a vision for how to move this organization forward. And I think that includes working with this type of artist. So bringing artists and organizations together is going to be something we're working on. And one of the ways we're doing it is you could fill out this form on Airtable. This form will be sent to you after this webinar is over, and you could fill it out. And if you're comfortable sharing your information, we'll share it with the people that have been participating in this webinar only. And if you say, you know what, I'm an organization, I'm interested in working with artists, and there'll be some questions about what you do, and then we'll share that information, and hopefully you can find each other. We're thinking of other ways to do this kind of teaming exercise, and so stay tuned for more. But I think I will put that in the chat now if it's not already in there. I'm going to pass it off to Maura Cuffey, who is just doing an incredible job with the Guaranteed Income for Artists program. So thank you for letting me talk and be here. And I will say that I'm part of the Arts and Education Roundtable.
Are we all in the club now? I think
so. I think so.
We got an okay from Kinsey. That's exciting. Thank you, Chris and Sarah, for kicking us off, and for Kinsey for welcoming us. There are so many of you on this call, which is really exciting. And I hope that we can get to all of your questions as best we can. I am Mara Cuppy Peterson. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Black woman who needs some sunshine desperately. I'm wearing glasses. I have very long box braids, and my background is blurred because I'm in a semi-sad co-working space so that I could get some focused work done today. So here, yeah, like Chris said, I'm here to talk to you, share more with you all about the guaranteed income for artists opportunity at Creatives Rebuild New York. Differently from you heard in Chris's presentation, whereas artist employment is all about collaboration and community being a part of that collaboration, guaranteed income for artists is really about supporting individual artists, just like it sounds, for meeting their basic needs and outside of what many of us have become familiar with, this traditional merit-based grant-making system. In short, the Guaranteed Income for Artists program will provide 2,400 artists all across New York State with monthly, no strings attached cash payments of $1,000 a month for 18 consecutive months. When I say the no strings attached, it's written here, it's out in the world, we really mean it, no strings attached. There's not a final report. It really is 18 consecutive months. Guaranteed income is not a brand new idea. And there's boatloads of evidence that show how powerful it is to simply trust people who are in need to spend money on their own terms. And so that's what this program is about, and specifically geared for artists, culture makers, and culture bearers. A little bit differently from how you might go through a grant making process, I wanted to go over how this program works in essence. There is an application period, which you saw earlier, is open right now and closes on March 25th, at which point those 2,400 artists will be selected. I'll share more about that in a minute. On April 15th, you'll be notified about your status. It's only at that point that we'll ask you to submit documentation of your eligibility. What's important to know about this is the application is really straightforward, and it's intended to be. It's 10 minutes. We heard someone got through it in 3 minutes, which is pretty amazing, but it really only asks questions that pertain to our selection process. Afterwards, we'll ask you a little bit more about the eligibility, which I'll also talk about in a moment. We'll verify that with our team of experts. Some of you may, all artists will have the opportunity to connect with a benefits counselor. I'll say more about that in a minute, a bit different than other grant making programs. And then the most exciting part, get money, get paid. You'll get onboarded into that system, and those consecutive cash payments will begin if you are selected. Who is this really for, right? And the simple, straightforward answer is that this is for artists in New York State who have financial need, right? We know many of us who are artists, we're all the things that serve all of the roles that community needs. We're neighbors and parents and caregivers. Many of us are queer and undocumented. We definitely are in cities. We're absolutely in rural towns in New York State as well. And many, many, many of us have financial need. That's really who this program is for. Sarah mentioned it briefly in going over Creatives Rebuild New York values. And I just want to emphasize again here that we are committed to confronting racial and wealth inequities. And that's part of where you see the focus on the Guaranteed Income program is around artists who have this financial need. So what is the eligibility in more clear terms? Just a few short things, right? Straightforward, we hope. You have to be 18 years of age or older as of January 1st of this year. Your primary residence needs to be in New York State at the time of application. You have to demonstrate financial need as determined by this measurement called the Self-Sufficiency standard, which I'll elaborate on. Of course, be an artist, number one thing. And just like the artist employment program, not be related to me or Chris or Sarah and all those things, right? Or our fiscal sponsor ties. A little more about the self-sufficiency standard. The self-sufficiency standard is really a more dynamic way to understand financial need. It's a measure that helps understand how much income is really necessary to meet basic needs. These needs are like housing, childcare, food, healthcare, transportation, and miscellaneous items as well. Many cash assistance programs, guaranteed income being one kind of cash assistance program that exists all over the US and other places as well, use measurements and income caps, such as the official poverty measure, which are unfortunately not very nuanced or understand all of the needs of an individual to really live a life. The self-sufficiency standard, on the other hand, takes into account various household sizes and compositions, as well as the difference in geographic costs needed to make ends meet. We have a calculator. This is like big data, not big data in like the evil techie way, but big data meaning like really thoroughly researched and analyzed information gathered by the University of Washington and has been used to implement other kinds of programs. We welcome, when you get to our website is a wealth of information also in relationship to the self-sufficiency standard. There's a calculator that you can play around with, and I definitely encourage you to take a peek at that because it'll give you a better insight into what that eligibility requirement means for this program. How will artists be selected to participate? The biggest thing I hope that you all hear from me and from Chris and Sarah is that both of these programs are not about artistic excellence or merit. We really believe that artists are deserving of financial security, point blank, period. And so for the selection process for guaranteed income, we're trying to move towards a more equitable distribution, right? And to that end, are challenging merit-based grant making. To be more specific, artists of all kinds, regardless of their identity and circumstance and location within New York State, will be selected. This all depends on how many people apply, this, that, and the third. The numbers mean things. And the selection is a randomized process that will prioritize people who hold these identities and community conditions. Similar to you heard in the artist employment program, we are aiming to reach artists who are deeply rooted and reflective of those populations who face barriers to financial stability and security. So that's where you see this bulleted list coming from. We really hope if you're an artist that does not have a financial safety net, right, that you can't call someone to help you pay a bill, if you are deaf, disabled, if you are Indigenous, if you're living in a rural context, any number of these things, we really, 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 really encourage you to apply because this program is for you. After selection, a whole bunch of cool things happen. The thing you need to know for now is that all artists will be notified on April 15th of what the situation is. That April 15th date is when you'll receive all of the information that you need if you are selected to go through the next steps. It will be easy and seamless and clear, but just know April 15th is when you'll have really clear instructions for what happens. One of the bigger things that happens is that submitting documentation of eligibility for verification. Once that process closes, payments will happen. We're really excited that artists will have some options on how to receive their monthly cash payments, direct deposit, reloadable debit card, direct into a Venmo or PayPal account. That will depend on a couple of different factors. And like I mentioned before, on April 15th, you'll know exactly what you need to know in order for that to happen. No strings attached really meant no strings attached. So there's no reporting. You don't have to tell us anything if you don't want to, just that the information we need to get you your cash payments in a regular way. That being said, as Sarah mentioned, the third part of our work is narrative change, right? Storytelling, advocacy. And so if you're the kind of artist who wants to be a part of that, you'll have an opportunity to contribute, not required in any way whatsoever. One critical difference between how guaranteed income functions in the world and sort of other programs is its relationship to the benefits cliff. This is not just our program. This is something that all guaranteed income programs for artists and for other kinds of people are facing, is trying to make sure, figuring out what happens if additional income affects people's benefits. We're trying to change the world. I did not change federal legislation in the last few months that I've been holding this position. So it's important that people are aware that taking part in this program might impact benefits you receive. When I'm speaking about benefits, I mean SNAP, WIC, a Section 8 voucher, SSI, SSDI, those sorts of things. Artists who are selected to be in the program and also currently receive benefits will have access to a benefits counselor. These are, I'm declaring, the best people in the world. I've really enjoyed working with our benefits counseling partners. These are licensed social workers who are not just adept, but trained and certified to navigate these sort of complex systems. What they will do is support, just like it sounds, it's counseling, it's one-on-one, it's intimate virtual sessions to support an artist in making a final decision. No one has to say yes, right? You might go through that benefits counseling and decide that the guaranteed income program isn't going to be what you need right now, and that will be up to you. The benefits counselors are merely there to help you gather the information you might need, right, to make the decision. The application process is, like I said, I hope really straightforward, right? The deadline is March 25th, just shy of midnight Eastern. It really is about 15 minutes to complete the application. That application is on Submittable, and you can find that on our website. The questions only pertain to eligibility, which is the first set of questions, and the rest are to account for those who experience barriers to securing to reaching financial security, as I mentioned when I talked about the selection process earlier. Just like, yeah, same dates, so it's hopefully clear and exciting and fun. Closing on March 25th, right? And then detailed next steps and notification on April 15th. A couple other things that I hope will be useful to this crowd, and that perhaps you'll also pass on this information to your people and people who you think should apply, is some of the supports that we're generating around the application itself and the outreach efforts that we're doing. The thing number one is that we have a help desk of also really great folks. Maybe they're also my new best friends because I think they're amazing. They are a small but mighty team who are literally answering the phones, as well as responding to email inquiries. The help desk is there to support people who need technical support in submitting an application, maybe have a small question that they couldn't figure out. Our guidelines and FAQs on our website are translated in multiple languages. There's a wealth of information there. So the help desk is really if I really can't figure out anything else, can't find it on the website, or have different access needs that we didn't do a good job of accommodating, right, in our application platform. That's really what the help desk is for. They're well equipped and are doing their best to answer all of your calls as quickly as they can. They also have dedicated translators, right? So there's a lot of stuff the help desk is doing. There's the email and the phone number for those folks as well. This is a fun webinar. Hey, there's more. So if you signed into this one a few minutes late, or if you want to pass on this information to other people, just know that we have 2 to 3 sessions every week from now until when the applications close. And we certainly encourage, they're both regional and based on affinity. People can sign up for any of these. They don't have to align with that region or affinity to show up for these webinars. However, just like Chris said around the sort of teaming idea, right, for artists and organizations to sync up, if that's something that you or people in your network are interested in, signing up for one of these sessions related to your geography or affinity is probably a good idea. Almost to the close, another group of people who I admire and I'm growing and learning from is our Artist Outreach Corps. So this is a group of 10 people across New York State who are trust builders, I would call them. We know relationship building is so crucial to any of this work. And these people both have lots of relationships to artists and organizations across the state, and are looking forward to building more, right? Our CRNY is a small team, small but mighty team. Our help desk is a small but mighty team. This outreach core is helping us become a medium but mighty team, right? Of people who are making sure people know about this opportunity. These are also their email addresses of all of these people can be found on our website. So if you have a question about, which program might be a best fit for you, or you're interested in connecting with an organization, trying to figure out the right match for a partnership, any one of these, really their organizers is available to connect in a more intimate and personal way. And then finally, just in summary, you saw this slide before, but just to sort of recap everything we've shared, there are 2 funding opportunities that Creative Rebuild New York is really honored to be a part of designing and putting out in the world. The Artist Employment Program, which is about a joint collaboration between artist organizations in service of community. There's funding for artist salaries, as well as funding for organizations to support that actual collaboration. There's a 2-stage review process that's really centering the relationship, the reciprocity, what that collaboration is and could become. That employment period needs to start June 2020 and close June 2022, 2024. Wow, it's not 2020 anymore. Did you all hear me do that? Yikes. It begins June 2022, ends June 2024. The guaranteed income for artists is about individual artists, $1,000 a month for 18 consecutive months. In order to be eligible, artists need to be 18 years old, be an artist, of course, be in New York State, have financial need according to the self-sufficiency standard, right? Just note that how we're selecting artists and guaranteed income is not about artistic merit. We're not doing a panel review process on everybody's resume. And that once artists are selected, they'll be notified on April 15th. That concludes, such a formal word. That concludes our presentation. Thank you all for hanging tight. And I think I'll pass to Kinsey now, is that right?
Sure. Thank you so much to all 3 of you, Mara, Sarah, and Christopher, for being here, sharing all of this information, for putting these programs together, making them available to our community. Super exciting. I also have to shout out, thank you, Sarah, for your quick fingers. Sarah has been diligently at work this whole time, answering some of your questions in the chat and in the Q&A. So if you asked a question, make sure that you look at the answered section as well, because it may have already been answered for you. I want to acknowledge that we have almost 100 questions still open, and we certainly don't have time to get to all of them, but I would encourage you all, if we don't get to your question, use that resource that Mara shared, the help desk, and we'll make sure that you have that information at the end of this webinar and in any follow-up emails, but we'll get to as much as we can. So we're going to start at the top with our first question from Nancy. Nancy asks, hello, a potential collaborating artist we have been speaking with about this opportunity wonders whether there is an expectation for the number of hours / schedule to be eligible for the $65,000 salary. Should we be thinking about this as a full-time equivalent, i.e. 40 hours per week position? And would the salary be divvied up if there are collaborating artists working at different levels of engagement?
Hi. Sarah, do you want to take this or you want me to hit it? Full-time FTE is key here. No divvying. Each artist is given $65,000. It cannot be divided, and it's a full-time employment position. It's a full-time salary. The idea is that while they might not be working 40 hours for the organization, they're spending other time in their practice. So yeah, does that make sense? Is that helpful, Nancy? I don't think Nancy can answer. Are you there, Nancy?
Nancy is one of my favorite people. But
okay.
Yeah, I think, Chris, that's great. I think the only other thing I should just, when we're thinking, can you just talk a little bit about this sort of the artist practice and how it can fit in and the multiple ways that it can fit in within. There were a bunch of questions about that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think
Thanks.
that's a big question. And that's to be decided between the artist and the organization. We're emphasizing that be part of the collaboration, that time is given for that. However, if it's embedded in the collaboration, if you're a teaching artist and that fulfills that practice desire of the artist, then speak about that in the application. So it's something to be thought out between the artist and organization. What a great conversation to have. How can I embed my practice in some of my time during the week? Because aren't all these things kind of related? Keeping up my practice is just going to make me better at our collaboration, right? Nancy?
I saw we got from Nancy in the chat. Great, yes, thank you. So we're on a roll. First question answered wonderfully. I think this next question sort of ties into that from Doris. What is the minimum/maximum number of hours per week or month the artists have to work for the organizations?
That's up to the organization and artists to decide. But again, full-time employment and how that split occurs is a discussion between them. It could be a split that's 2 hours a week. It could be 2 months out of the 2-year period. That's up to the partnership. I wish I had a better, more clear answer for you, but I think I have confidence and trust that orgs and artists will figure that out.
All right, thank you.
If they don't, then just ask Nancy. Then Nancy's our person. She'll take that. She'll route all questions.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. Let's see, our next question is from Ruth. For those of us who exist in the intersection of what's offered, so we have our own organizations and our artists ourselves who need consistent income, how do we navigate this process and how do we determine which to apply to?
Maura, do you want to take that, or?
I'll try. I'll start, and then you fix it.
Yeah.
That's a really great question. I guess I would start with what kind of support is going to be most generative to you right now, and if that's a loving, committed relationship, right? If it's marriage, no. But if it's about sort of like relationship to community, and it's about relationship to organization and interfacing with and collaboration, right? And that you have some people in mind that you might want to collaborate with, and I'd say that it's the artist employment program. And then from there, think through, is it the organization I currently am working with, or is it my organization and a few other organizations, and you have some vision for what that could look like. One of our outreach core members, we had a little huddle today and mentioned that part of this work in applying, getting ready for the artist employment program is about dreaming up like what that vision, what that 2 years could really feel like and look like. So if that's like you're dreaming into that and it's like that's the thing, I would say if you're an artist who meets the eligibility for guaranteed income, so I definitely encourage you to take a peek at that self-sufficiency standard. Again, the calculators, you can find the link on our website. I'll drop the link to the guaranteed income. I'll try to keep dropping some links in the chat. And the idea of collaboration makes you sneeze right now, because it's like, I can't do another thing. I'm doing too much. However, I really can't make ends meet. And I would really be supported by this additional income, then I would say apply for the guaranteed income for artists program.
I'll just add to that the idea of having having to choose is frustrating, and we get that. We wish it did not have to be like that. This wasn't a situation where it was not intentional. We wanted to find different solutions, but in terms of capacity, the mechanics of how this application will operate, and the complexity of the guaranteed income and probably popularity of it, this was the solution we had to go with. I just want to make that clear, and we recognize it's a tough decision. In terms of the artist employment, again, I would stress go out and talk to organizations before getting on Submittable. See if there is something you could come up with that is really interesting. Whether you decide to go for guaranteed income or not, if you decide, no, I'm not going to do artist employment, I'll do guaranteed income, now you've just made a relationship. And maybe that's something further. But I think it's hard right now because we're all inside, but you know, it's good to get out there and connect.
All right, thank you both. Let's see, I'm going to move forward to a question from Uli. For the artist employment program, please define organizations and if the artist can be the owner of the organization or what the relationship needs to be.
Good one. We're getting a lot of that. No, you cannot. It cannot be the same person. We want an organization, we want an artist, and we want a community separate. Community-based organizations is what we're talking about in terms of nonprofits. They could be artist organizations, and they could be arts organizations or non-arts organizations. Does that answer? Is that helpful? I hope that's helpful. I can't see anyone. I keep thinking I'm going to see people. But.
I think that's clear. Thank you. Thank you so much. Also, for the artist employment program, do the organizations and artists have to share the same community? For example, if the organization is rural, does the artist also have to be in that rural area?
That's a complicated, that could take many different, I would say read the guidelines, read the, about eligibility. I can understand how there could be some matches that exist in non-rural and rural areas, but it's about the collaboration and the community impact. So keep those things in mind and think through it. It would be hard for me to say no, because I want to be surprised, and I'm sure I'll be surprised at how the impact could happen possibly in different populations or living in different areas. New York State is huge. Am I right about that, partners? And here?
Yeah, I feel like the biggest headline is got to be in New York State for sure, right? So because this is intended for New York State artists, so that's thing number one as far as what the eligibility is. But yeah, everything else you said, and I just threw in the chat. I think Sarah and I are tag teaming. We'll keep dropping links in the chat of where you can find the more detailed explanation of these things on our website.
All right, and yeah, I'll be sure to gather those links from the chat as well, and in any follow-up that we send with the recording to this, I'll send up those resources as well. Let's see, our next question. Does the nonprofit fiscal sponsor need to be based in New York State? Does that question make sense? Does the nonprofit fiscal sponsor of the New York org need to be based in New York State?
Yes.
If the organization only provides a partial contribution towards benefits, will the funded artist be able to get insurance fully funded?
That's a conversation to have with the organization. Once you get to phase 2 of this process, then that's when some of the decisions could be made about, do I want to be part of the worker cooperative? Does the organization say, you know what, we don't offer full employment here, so if you have that opportunity, please take it. So that's a discussion between the artist and the organization. Everyone has a lot of people have different needs in terms of insurance and things like that. So that will be definitely fleshed out during phase 2, where there'll be a lot more information about those benefits. The intermediary I talked about as well, a lot of that stuff will be made more clear. Good question.
Here's a short one from Irene. Can I collaborate with a New York City library?
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, great. And another attendee asks, it feels like the narrative portion is very brief. Assuming there will be significant interest, and in light of the fact that the collaboration need not be fully defined, how can an application distinguish itself?
That's a trick question there. You're trying to set me up. I don't know how to answer that. We don't know what these applications are going to look like, but I will say, of course, we're not making the decisions here. There's a regional, think about who's on the panel. These are folks that will understand the particular regions, the communities themselves. It'll be a little different in that there'll be that regional knowledge in there as opposed to a more national grant where the panelists might not fully understand what's happening. And I know it feels strange to have those narrative questions be small, but isn't that wonderful, right? Anyone else on my team want to add to that, or does that sound?
That sounds great. And I think just to emphasize something you said before, that I think one of the keys to this whole thing is talk to your people before you apply, right, for the artist employment program, both for the what the collaboration will be, what you want the narrative questions to say about your relationship, and then also for some of the other things that you answered earlier, Chris, about benefits and insurance, et cetera. It is kind of have the conversation. The application is an opportunity to have those conversations together to decide is this something we want to try to do together.
All right, moving on to Sherry's question. So is this funding exclusively for artists to generate material? I was thinking of applying with a community/cultural organization to offer writing classes, which I and other artists would teach. Would I need to create original material, or is offering classes in which the community members generate material enough?
It's not about generating content. This is a bit different than this program is similar to CETA and the WPA, where content creation was a big part of it. That's not necessarily what this program is about. It doesn't mean that it can't happen, but that's between the collaboration to decide. But it's not merit based in that term. We're not asking about deliverables. We're asking about the collaboration and impact on community. So if those things fit into that, wonderful.
Alrighty, we have another question from an anonymous attendee. Is it possible for partner organizations to do work that is political or politicized? For example, if an organization has both 501c3 and 501c4 arms, or if an organization works on issues with a political charge, are there restrictions around the kind of work this partnership might engage with?
Sarah,
I'll answer that. No, as long as we can only give funds to a 501c3 public charity, a government instrumentality, a municipality, or a 501c3 fiscal sponsored project. That's it. We're not dictating what the work is.
Thank you. Another question, do we know the 3 narrative questions for the employment application before opening it? Is there somewhere they can see those?
If you look at the guidelines for artist employment and GI, there's PDFs available on our website in English and Spanish. Eventually, those will be in multiple languages as well, where you could find the application prior to jumping into the submittable world.
Great. Tony asks, I have a few organizations that I've worked with. 2 are super established in the arts, and 1 is a social entrepreneurship foundation. Should the organization be an arts organization, or can it be a CBO focusing on something else?
A 501c3, that's an arts organization or a non-arts organization. That's what matters. It can't be a for-profit, but I don't think Tony Blackman, is that Tony Blackman? Yep. I hope that answers that.
Another attendee asks for clarification on what what we mean by primary residence. Is that defined as a certain amount of time out of the year, or how is that defined?
That's a great question. I feel like I feel like you all know what that means. You know what it means. It means if you're like an artist, an example I've been giving that I hope is useful is, especially for musicians or artists of actually many disciplines. If you're going to be in a residency for a couple of months, this year you're going to be away for a little bit. That doesn't mean that residency is your primary residence necessarily. What we're talking about is where you do community, where you have your neighbors, where you get your mail, right? Where you do your life needs to be New York State. That's what we mean by primary residency.
Great.
You can add, Chris. Do you have another example?
No, I was just going to say we should put that in the application, like under where it asks, is your primary residence New York? We should just be like, the summary should be like, you know what that means. Right? Just, come on.
That was poor form on my part. I'll take that.
Okay, our next question is from Ellen. Ellen asks, are applications in multiple languages?
Yes, we have some options there. So the application that's submittable is available to be entered in English and in Spanish. The PDFs of the applications will be available in the top 10 languages in New York State. However, we have this help desk as well that people will help guide you through the application. And if you choose to, if you need language support, we have a connection to over the phone interpretation. So what will happen is you'll call in to the help desk and say, I need language support, I speak Urdu. That operator will then connect to language line, over the phone interpreter will be merged into a three-way call, and then the consecutive interpretation will happen. So that questions will be asked, interpreted, given to the operator, and vice versa. So we try to have multiple languages represented as best we can. It's very complicated to do it in a submittable application. One of our colleagues, Soleil Estevez, worked so hard on creating an application in Spanish, and it's just all very complicated. But yeah, it's all there. That should be helpful. But if there are other barriers, let us know.
Perfect. Our next question is there a restriction that applicants need to be US citizens and or permanent residents?
I can start that one because it's a bit different per program for different reasons. For guaranteed income for artists, your documentation status will not affect your eligibility or your ability to receive payments. So if you have an ITIN, don't have an ITIN, you have a social security number, don't have a social security number, that's okay for guaranteed income for artists. You do need to be a New York State, right, primary resident. That's the big thing. The artist employment program is about an employment relationship. So I'll let Chris talk about that.
Sorry, my mic, my headphones are cutting out. Can you hear me okay? Could someone follow up on that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I was just whether or not like you have to be a permanent resident of the US, like citizenship, I think is the overall question, and that relationship of that to the artist employment program. So I was just starting off that the employment program is an employment relationship, right? And so that has to be a conversation with that organization who's employing that artist, right? And all of that, this, that, and the third. But maybe Sarah fill in the details if we have further ones.
No, I don't have any additional ones.
Yeah.
Nope.
Great. Let's see. Carrie asks, if one is currently employed, but wanting to leave their job to spend more time on their artistry, would the guaranteed income be a possibility?
That's a good question. It would be if if you're eligible for the program, right? So again, so there's no surprise eligibility. All the eligibility that's named on our website and our guidelines is true. If you are an artist, that's how you are in the world. That's how you identify. You looked at our definition and said, yeah, that's me. Like, that's who I am. If you're 18 years or older, if your primary residence is in New York State, and then of course, if your income falls below the self-sufficiency standard, then you're eligible to apply and should. So it's all about eligibility, really, for that situation.
Thanks, Mara.
Mm-hmm.
Christy asks, can an artist collective be sponsored by a 501c3 to be eligible for the employment program and provide the salaries to their artists that are part of the collective?
Each artist needs to be represented in the artist employment application. Does that make sense?
So you would have the main person who submits the primary application and then invite those artists.
Yeah.
But I just want to, sorry if I'm misunderstanding Kenzie and Chris, it has to be an organization though. There has to be an organization partner as well. So it cannot just be a collaboration of 3 artists together, right? So just there has to be artist, organization. You need both. Community is the third thing that I'm pointing to. But so you need both.
Great, thank y'all for that clarification. Philomena asks, does the calculator take into account household income or just my personal income?
That's a really perfect question that applies to everyone. The calculator is about household income, right? And so the eligibility as written asks you to look at your household income. If your household income falls below, right, that would make you eligible for this program. The calculator, again, I recommend playing around with it. There's lots of data and there's a whole, if you're the kind of person like me who likes to read those white papers before bed. I know Sarah's that kind of a person too. You can read, there's a whole report about New York State and the self-sufficiency standard and household size and how they came to these measurements around income and expenses. Household income is the income you should be thinking about, and that is how the calculator functions.
Great. I know that we have touched on this already, but as I'm going through these questions, I'm seeing this one pop up so many times. So I just want to clarify for everyone on the call in case they missed it. Can you apply for both programs? And if so, why not?
No, you cannot.
Mara usually has a good reason behind why you cannot.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately not. And this is like my least favorite thing to talk about, because I think ideally people would be able to apply to both. And the reason for that is there are a few reasons why we had to make that determination. A big one is about the timing of our initiative and our ability to care for artists in the process itself. Meaning in order for both programs to happen and us to get all those 2,700 artists either employment or guaranteed income by the end of 2024, we have to move relatively quickly in making that all happen. Applying to both delays the timeline by over 8 weeks, I think was the last estimation, which means that nobody gets money until much later this year, which is not our intention. We also realize that, the importance of having 2,700 artists overall individually, right, receive this money rather than some overlap. That being said, I think this is, there's a lot of learning. There's a lot of things we're learning as we're implementing these programs, right? We just got started. We have 3 years to make it happen. And one of the things that's interesting, these are two very different ways to support artists' employment versus guaranteed income. And we do hope that you'll think about like, what is the thing that's best for you, right, before applying, rather than what am I sort of more likely. Although we recognize, just here from me and from my heart, not ideal. And we do think it will make for a better process. We do know actually, and we have all the evidence that it makes for a better process for everyone, particularly the people applying, to only be applying to one program. So that's why that restriction has been put in place.
Great. Thank you all for touching on that again.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Katya, who wonders, for that second part of selection, are there additional documents of eligibility that need to be shared, and what might those be?
Yeah, for the guaranteed income program, it's going to be fairly easy. And the reason why it's vague is because we're aware that artists might have different circumstances. And so we have sort of like a few lanes and timelines related to what information you are or are not able to provide. And so it'll be sort of semi-customized based on what you're able to share with us. For most of everybody, it's going to be really straightforward. It's going to be like, click a button, share this thing, do this thing. And if you're selected on April 15th, you'll have all the information you need, and you'll have some time to get that done. So it'll be promise you won't have like in 24 hours, finish this thing. There will be ample time for you to finish that process, and we'll be, responsive and caring and communicative with you all along the way. In the eligibility requirements, in the guidelines for guaranteed income, there are some like things that we might ask you. There's a whole list of that. I can drop that link in the chat so you can start to think through. Many folks will not have to put all of those things together. We just wanted to give you a sense of like the range of things, one or two of these things together. For sure, for the artist part of the work, we'll want to know just like 300 words about who you are. You'll be able to submit a video, like a link to your work, but not like a heavy, like, here's my entire portfolio and my super polished website and none of that. Just the minimal amount of stuff is what we're going to be doing. And April 15th, I'll just say it a million more times, is the date that you'll know what that process is, and what you'll need to do to move through it.
Up next, for the AEP scenario, if you have like two artists and the organization, what happens if one of those artists who's invited to fill out that application doesn't fill out their part of the form? What does that mean for the whole application? Is it canceled? Is there an alternative? If that happens, what's the process?
Right. Well, the primary applicant will be in charge of managing that. So if there is a request made for someone to fill out an application, they would just be required to cancel that request. It doesn't make the application null and void. But if it's reflected in the narrative questions that I'm working with these two artists and one of them doesn't show up, that'll just make it confusing for the reviewers. So, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the application will be null and void.
Great, that's good news.
But definitely, I would stress that it's important to have those pieces figured out, and that's why the primary applicant can really be, whether it could be an organization or an artist that's really helping to organize that information and to be in contact with the potential applicant partners in the process. So I would just stress that it's a good idea to keep that in mind.
Thank you, Christopher. Our next question, I also want to note we have 8 minutes left on this webinar, so I want to acknowledge again all of you. Thank you for your questions. I do apologize if we don't get to them, but we do have resources to share with you to get answers to those questions if they're not taken care of in the next 8 minutes. But we will answer as many as we can. Next up, are artists who are married and file joint taxes eligible to apply for both programs as separate applicants? So one would apply for the artist employment program and the other for the income.
I think so. Sarah?
I think so. I think, yes. So we will be verifying. So what happens is that if, let's say you start at $0 that you have as income, then you would both be, based on how the self-sufficiency standard calculator works, you're taking your household income. If that comes out to 0, then yes, then both folks would be allowed to apply. If one person then so if one person then got a salary of 65,000 and the other person did not, depending on you where you live, you might move out of that self-sufficiency standard. However, we are only verifying your income one time at the beginning of the program. So technically, I think depending on how much both are making, that should work. That might be it. But yes, try it. See how the calculator works. Go look at it, see the questions that it asks, make sure that you understand that. And then yes, you could apply in that way. Yeah, we won't know who, we're not asking you who you're married to or partnering with or any of the other things with.
We love a love story though, so.
Yes. If you could meet during the program as two artists during the artist employment program and get married, that would make for better storytelling.
Would love it. I also want to uplift, Robin put this in the Q&A. I just want to share it with you all, a comment that the young people on the help desk lines are awesome and they're patient and professional,
okay.
and Robin loves them. So just throwing that out for you all who will be hanging out with them later, I'm sure, over the phone. Let's see. Next question, is this program going to be reoccurring with an application next year or after that, or are we not sure?
Okay. I think we're pretty sure. Well, I'll say I'm sure. And after 3 years, I will be retiring. So yes, we're sure. And yeah, for now, we're pretty sure that this is the time to take advantage of this.
But I will also point out that there's a survey that is coming out of our narrative change department of 2 that is really asking a lot of questions that's looking to have impact on changing the way artists are funded, changing those strategies, getting more information about what New York State artist situation looks like. And that ultimately is part of a longer plan about influencing policy, influencing how artists are funded, what strategies we use. So we encourage, that's our long game right now, right? Does that sound good, Sarah?
Yes.
Are you really retiring? No.
Of course. I've been saying that for a while, Chris.
Yeah, okay.
Alrighty, our next question is for the artist employment program. Our person saw the term government instrumentality. Can you explain what that means or give an example?
A municipal organization, a government instrumentality, a Department of Cultural Affairs type of thing. I hope that is helpful. Government.
Yeah, it can also be a small town upstate, and it can be an agency within a city as long as it's government.
Great. I think we might be able to get 2 more questions in. The first one should be quick from an anonymous attendee. Is the guaranteed $1,000 a month taxable?
Oh, great question. No. Woohoo. Yeah, so, and part of this is because that money is both described and framed and clarified to the participant as a gift. And the IRS classification for taxable, the cap for taxable gifts is for 2022 is $16,000 annually. And so at no point across those 18 months will any artist go over that cap as far as the $1,000 a month they receive from the guaranteed income program. And so therefore it's not taxable income.
Great. And our last question that we'll be able to get to today is if the selection is not based on merit, can you explain a little bit more what it's based on, or how, I think you said that it was randomized. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to. This is exciting, different. We're learning all the programs, guaranteed income programs across the country are learning and doing this kind of work. And randomized, right, is an important piece of that process. The sort of principle underneath it is that all folks are deserving, right? And so who are we to say, like, if you're a good artist or a bad artist, first of all, who are we to say that? Like, there's all sorts of bias and subjectivity involved in that kind of work. And also that this program isn't necessarily designed to say the best artists are the ones who should get this cash. And when in fact we're saying Creators Rebuild New York believes in the financial security of artists, point blank, period, right? And we need to figure out how to do that. And so the randomized process is put in place to avoid that merit conversation and instead say there are artists in need. We have this eligibility, and we also know, related to our values and looking towards equity, that there are definitely certain populations of folks who have historical, right, long-term, intractable sort of barriers to financial security. That being said, all artists will be selected, and we're really excited to have the opportunity to showcase to the world and to, anyone who cares to look at it, that there are artists all over New York State, right? So there are artists in rural towns and suburban areas, in cities of New York City, of course, but artists all over the state should be applying. And we know that the demographics are different in different parts of the state, right? So the selection will also depend on how many people overall apply as well.
All right, I want to acknowledge that we're at 4:30. Chris, I would just like to ask if you don't mind quickly to share a tiny bit and maybe share the link again. A few people have asked about the matchmaking between organizations and artists. If you could share that resource again, that would be amazing.
Yes, I just put it in the chat. I'll put it in again. I apologize for not listing this panel day because I asked about that. But if you filled it out already and didn't answer that question, don't worry. I have a way of figuring that out. So yeah, if you fill out this form here that I'm putting in the chat, we're going to ask you, are you an artist looking for an organization? Are you an organization looking for an artist? It's going to ask your name, it's going to ask your email, and is it okay to share this? So then what we will do is share this information with the folks that attended this session and saying, there's even an area to talk a bit about what you do. So we'll share this and you'll look at it and you'll say, you know what, I'm an organization really interested in connecting with the Pakistani community in Brooklyn. And I have an idea, so I'm going to contact this artist that described themselves in that particular way. So please fill it out, and we'll share it. I'll share it with you, Kinsey, and maybe you could send it back through your awesome organizational skills of organizing this. So.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to put in the chat for everyone the contact page for Creatives Rebuild New York. You can access the help desk there. Any questions you have, you can go to that link. I want to say a massive thank you one more time to Mara, Sarah, and Christopher for bringing this opportunity to our community, for making this possible. So exciting. And thank you for taking the time to answer everyone's questions. For those of you still on the call, I just want to share with you that the Roundtable is launching a third cycle of our Arts Educator Emergency Relief Fund that awards one-time unrestricted grants of up to $1,000 to teaching artists and arts administrators who have been facing serious financial hardship due to the COVID-19 crisis. That application opens on March 7th, and there's a link to find out more information there. And that application will be available on that website starting March 7th. And I also just want to say that we're going to be hosting a tax tips for teaching artists webinar coming up on March 1st. That's a Tuesday at 4 p.m. with Empire Tax Prep. So there's a link to register there if you would like to join us for that free tax tips session with Dominic Comparatore, who is a fantastic resource for our community and has been for some time. So please join us for those. And I believe that's it. Thank you all so very much. I hope you have a lovely rest of your Friday and enjoy your weekend. And you'll be hearing from me soon. And I will be saving the chat. Yes, Anu, I will save it. I will save all the links and goodies, and you'll get it all. So thanks, everyone, and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Bye.